Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest, Jason Hopper, is a career coach for the Jewish Family Service of Greater Dallas. Jason is also a newer friend of mine that I met just within the last year and a half, and he has excellent insights on different career coaching and that we've really bonded over. So Jason, starting off, thank you for being on the podcast, of course. I'm guessing you probably didn't say as a child you wanted to be a career coach, or did you?
No. Actually, when I was a child, I wanted to be either a professional baseball player, preferably a pitcher, or a rock star.
Cool.
The problem was, outside of just playing ball in the neighborhood with my friends, I didn't play baseball at all in high school, and I don't play any musical instruments, so neither of those things came to fruition. Yeah, it's funny, Angela, because I transitioned into being a coach, and I actually fell into my entire career for the most part. What happened was, after university, I needed a job, and I just applied to a position that sounded kind of interesting, and it was basically an admin position for a staffing company. I got the job, and part of what I was supposed to be doing was looking at Career Builder and Monster and looking at the resumes and the job descriptions from the recruiters that they gave me, and I would try to match them up and then hand them off to the recruiter. And if the recruiter managed to get a contract placement, I got like $50 off of a candidate that I gave them.
Right.
If I gave them a candidate that made a permanent placement, I would get like $100. So I'm rolling along, and finally I realize they're making a lot more money than I am. I'm doing all the work. They're getting all the money. So I ended up going to the president of the company. This is a boutique firm, very small company. There were like 8 recruiters total and me as the admin. So I had access to the president of the company, and I walked in and I like, Jack, you need to teach me how to be a recruiter. He's like, why? And I had a spreadsheet that I kept and turned into him, right? And I just slammed it on his desk. I said, that's why.
That's why.
And Jack goes, he laughed and he goes, yeah, I was hoping you would catch on to that for a few more months, but all right, sure. And they trained me how to be a recruiter. That was like my career for the next 14 years. I was an on-site manager at a couple of places. I was, but mostly, and I had some corporate recruiting experience, but most of it was staffing. And I did that for 14 years.
In today's day and age, we have the whole recruiter suck. We're all the worst, one's right, one's wrong. But from that recruiting training you got, what are some of the myths about recruiters that you would like to call out on this podcast for those that are listening?
So, great question. Here's a big misconception. Job seekers think that the recruiter works for them.
Yep.
They don't. The recruiter, if they are a corporate recruiter, they work for their clients, which are the internal departments within that corporation. If it's a staffing company, no, they work for their clients that they've gotten. The job seeker, if they can place you, great. If not, well, nothing happens. But either way, they don't work for you. Don't expect them to get you a job. That's not their job. Their job is to fill job requisitions for their clients, period.
Exactly. It's such a great explanation. And I feel like unless you're on the inside of it, you really don't know that, but it is interesting. So we do recruiting for 14 years. Mm-hmm. Then what happened where we decided to make a change?
Good question. I got terminated. And
oh, that's what we bonded over at first. I forgot that. Yes, of our trauma firing stories. But sorry to interrupt. But yes, you got to tell us about that too.
Well, it's such a good story, though, right? So what happened was, because I can't just stop there, right?
Right.
So what happened was, I was an on-site manager. My boss showed up unexpectedly to my on-site, and she goes, "I'm here to tell you today's your last day." And I'm like, "What?" Because I'd made friends with the client who was the HR manager. Like his office was right next to mine. We went to happy hour every Friday. Like I knew it wasn't a performance thing. Otherwise, my friend would have been like, shit, Hopper, where are my people? Right?
Right.
And and so I knew it wasn't a performance thing. Actually, to back that up, and I also know this is true, because she walks into the office and John, who's the HR manager, that's my buddy, runs into my office and he goes, "Hey, Hopper, He's out of breath. He's like, you want to go outside for a smoke? And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to call her out. I'm like, my boss is here. Can I catch you later? And he's like, yeah. And he walks out. And she goes, sorry, I'm here to tell you today's your last day. And I'm like, why? And she goes, at the request of our legal department, I am not allowed to say anything further.
Okay.
And I said, what? And she repeated it. And I'm like, okay. And I just like gathered up the few things that I had on my desk. And I walk out the door and there's John. He's outside smoking. He's like, I'm so sorry. She called me like 2 minutes before she walked in. I was on the other side of the warehouse. And I'm like, it's not a problem, man. I'll talk to you later. And then I go on to go interviewing places, right? And they asked, so why did you at your last job? And you're like, I don't know.
Great question. I'll let you know when I figure it out.
They're like, what do you mean you don't know? It's like, well, and I explained the story and tell them what happened. And then I followed up with, hey, Texas is an employment at will state. They don't have to tell you legally why they let you go. They're like, oh, yeah, you're right. And then we just move on. But it was like, it was rough, right? To find a job. And you're like, I don't know why I don't work there anymore.
Did you ever find out?
No, they never told me. And you know what? Like a couple years later, the district manager and I had a phone call. He called me out of the blue to ask for something. Of course, he needs a favor. Of course, he's not nowhere around when he allowed her to come in and fire me.
Right.
And I told him, I'm like, hey, you let her come in and fire me. And he goes, she just does what she wants. And I'm like, that's bullshit, but okay, whatever. So I never found out, but that's fine because what happened was, so I filed for my unemployment benefits and I got my UI, and then I had to go to my local workforce center. Guys, if you don't know, every state has a workforce center to help you get back to work. It was implemented way back in the day, and I'm not going to get into the history of how those were created, but I go to my workforce center. It's basically training on, hey, you just got unemployed. Now what? And here's what you need to do to keep your benefits. And I'm sitting there and I'm like unhappy like everybody else that's in the place. And I meet with my employment consultant afterwards and she goes, oh, you're a recruiter? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to help you. And I'm like, great. Can you just sign my form that says I'm here so I can get my benefit? And off I go. And then, I don't know, about 3 weeks later, she calls me and wants to refer me to an internal position with the state for what she does as an employment consultant. And I had to say yes because I can't turn down a job offer. I'd lose my benefits, right?
Right, to get the benefits. Yep.
So I said yes. I got the job. You know, it was funny because, Angela, I didn't really think I wanted the job.
We all have one of those, I swear.
Yeah. It was like, I don't know, man. Like, I was looking at the people that worked there and I'm like, some of them had a background in recruiting and staffing. And I'm like, is this where recruiters go to die? Like, what is going on in this building here? And so I was on a contract assignment as a recruiter and it was about to end. I was talking to my wife and she gave me the best advice ever. She said, you don't have another contract lined up. You don't have another offer. And you don't realize it, but you're burnt out on staffing. You're sad. You're depressed. I'm sick of you coming home sad and depressed. I want you to be happy. Take the job. If you don't like it, in 3 months, leave, go back to staffing. So I did. And I was there 7 years. And it just kind of worked and fit with me and what I did. And then when it was time for me to leave the state, I went over to Jewish Family Service of Greater Dallas, and it's been just amazing since then. And I've been there for 5 years. So.
Wow. Now, the transition and differential from going on the recruiting side to the career coaching side and focusing on that, tell us how that's different or, you know, I feel recruiting's more like transactional, but what's kind of your approach to career coaching and how you really like doing it?
So where I'm an expert is in job search strategy, interview technique, resume review, LinkedIn optimization, and personal branding. My approach to coaching is always going to be client-led. I'm going to let the client tell me what they think is important because what I think is important and what they think is important in the job search could be two different things. Now, that being said, I am there to act as a guide. For example, if I have a client that's like, oh, I hate social media and there's no way I'm going to be on LinkedIn, I'm going to be like, you should probably reconsider that a little bit. And here's why. Having no social media presence in 2025 is a huge red flag for employers. So you might want to at least get a LinkedIn, and we can work on building it up and making it look all great, right? But I let them tell me what they want in this guy. And I found over the years too, like a lot of times people don't really understand job search, even today. Like what they think job search is going to be is that they're going to be on Indeed and they're going to apply to a job and the recruiter's going to call them and then they're going to get the interview and then they're going to get the job offer.
Easy, right?
That's just not how this works. That's just not how it works today. It just doesn't. Today, job search is all about not only who you know, but who knows you. It's about being visible. And how can you best be visible? Once they understand that, they get better off. And then that's what I do is I help them create that brand and be visible so that employers will want to pick up the phone and call them.
Absolutely. And what are some of the key tips you have for people that often do say, I don't want to be on social media, or have that old school connotation of, oh, I'm just, like you said, I'm going to apply to the job, I'm going to get the interview, I'm going to get the offer, and it's really sunshines and roses and it's so easy. So what do you kind of tell people or kind of get that mentality out of their heads and kind of get them to come over to your side of things?
I tell them, you're going to be unemployed for a while.
I love the straightforwardness.
Well,
yes.
I found over the years, there's no need to bullshit clients. Right?
Nope.
And when I say stuff like that, they're like, what? And I'm like, look, you're here with me for a reason. It's because whatever you're doing isn't working. So you need to start listening to me and forget about what you think is going to happen. Like I just had a client today. We were supposed to be on Zoom and she didn't show up. And so I called her. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And it's like, we were going to be on Zoom. And she goes, I just can't figure out how Zoom works. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to need to figure that out because a lot of employers are doing video calls.
Right.
I'm like, if, you want to get a job faster, you're going to need to figure this out. I said, well, how do I do that? I don't know. Google. Like in coaching, we have a saying, clients to be coachable should be creative, resourceful, and whole. And if they're not coachable.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know that too.
I've had actually a few clients myself this week that are saying, oh, well, I don't know how to use this, so I'm not going to do it. And I mean, there was a point, I was not active on LinkedIn before 2017. I was forced to make it in college and it sat vacant for 6 or 7 years or whatever it did. So you need the right personality, to your point, the acronym you use there, but you have to roll with the times. I mean, especially if you're still actively looking for a job, you're going to get left behind. It does suck for people that maybe are not as tech savvy, but like Google it. You got the world at your literal fingertips here. So help me help you is what I always say.
It's funny. The first time I heard the term experienced worker or older worker, I like to say experience rich worker today.
Seasoned.
But the first time I heard that, it's like, oh, if you're over 40, you're an older worker. And I was like 42 at the time. I'm like, but I'm not an older worker. I'm like 40 years old. What are you talking?
Right.
And I work with some clients that are older. And I always tell them, it's like, you're not getting employed because you're not showing a willingness to learn. You're not showing that you want to know new things, Or it's one of two things. It's one, you're not showing a willingness to learn, or two, it's, back in the day, nobody gives a shit about what happened back in the day.
Yep.
Employers want to know, how can you move us forward? That's what they want to know. Nobody cares what happened back in the day.
My grandmother is in her 80s and she runs circles around people half her age. And I look at her as someone that she was in corporate, she broke some norms and things like that. But if she can learn it, I mean, she's gone to classes, she's sat down, she'll call me if she has issues. I mean, it's like, if she can learn that in her 80s, in her 70s is really when she started getting more hip with the cool kids. But you either learn or you don't. And I think that's why she's retracting back in age. I swear she gets younger by the day, but it does. And I think it is like a good mental stimulation too, not to go on that tangent of mental health issues too, but you have to. I mean, like you said, so many interviews at least first round phone call or second round, third round, all over video. And you need to know how to use it and test it. Or if you have kids, like ask your kids or just ask someone. There's so many free resources out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, we talked about some of the common things, of course, like being LinkedIn haters and all that. But what are you kind of seeing in this market right now? Or what are your thoughts as we record this, early 2025 in Q1? What are you kind of seeing in the market right there? What are your thoughts on it?
One of the things that I'm really big on is keeping up with trends. One of the things that I keep seeing again and again and again and again for trends for 2025 in the workplace is that employers are going to work a lot harder on retention and also right skill their current employees. And right skill is just the new fancy term for cross-train, really. And so what that means is if you're a job seeker, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get a new job because they're wanting to hold on to the people they already have, right? And so I've been telling clients and everybody, you've got to be visible. You've got to be front of mind. You've got to start connecting to people on LinkedIn, getting those virtual coffees, getting people to know who you are so that you're building in champions at companies where you want to work, at your target companies. Everybody, by the way, should have about 10 to 12 target companies. That'll change as you start talking to people. But you want to get real focused on where you want to work. Don't just run around on Monster, LinkedIn, Indeed. Oh, that's interesting. I gotta apply. Oh, that's interesting. I apply. Oh, that's interesting. That doesn't work. That's not going to work. You need to get real specific about what you want to do and where you want to go work, and then build in a champion at that company. That's the other thing. When I say get visible, it could be online. It could be like on LinkedIn, like build that presence. But it could also be like, and this is like, it's a great excuse to get in touch with people you may have fallen out with in your network. It's a new year. Get your phone. Who have you not talked to? Somebody in like, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months, a year, 2. You know what? I actually, so I do a LinkedIn live stream every Tuesday at 10 o'clock Central. It's called Caffeinate Your Career. And when you set up the event, you can actually invite people to the event. And one of the people that keeps popping up for me to suggest to invite to the event is my buddy whose name is Patrick. I was like, I haven't talked to this guy in like almost 20 years. And nothing bad happened.
Wow.
Like what happened was, so when I was single, I would do karaoke like every night.
I totally see that for you. That's awesome.
And like, you get to know the people because it's the same people that go to the pool hall, you know, the restaurants, the sports bars. So one of these people is Patrick. I get to know him really well. We became really good friends. And then again, nothing bad happened. Like I just started dating my wife. When you start dating somebody, you get couple friends, right? And so we just started hanging out with couple friends, and then I just fell out of touch with this guy. But he keeps popping up, you know, on my LinkedIn, and I'm like, I'm just gonna text him. I don't even know if it's his same number. I haven't talked to him in about 20 years, and I just text him, and I'm like, hey Patrick, I was thinking of you today. Hope you have a great day, right? And he responded immediately with, OMG, blast from the past, I miss your face. And then we were like in a text conversation for like, I don't know, 2 days, right? And we're still talking. My point is, it's been almost 20 years and I reached out to this guy and he was so happy to hear from me. So don't think about the time limit. Person's in your phone for a reason. Reach out to him. Who knows, right? Meetups are so important, right? Get out there. Don't go to, unless it's a very well-organized job search kind of meetup, it's going to be like, I don't know, 8 people sitting around bitching why they can't get work, and that's not productive. But if it's a meetup that's going to be fun, go to those meetups. I go to meetups. I love meetups. And when you start going, you got to keep going. You can't go one time and just like not ever go. You got to keep going. They got to get to know you. And then you get to tell your story.
Right. And if you could go to one a month, I mean, there's so many, I mean, especially I'm in Metro Detroit, as you know, but there's something on every corner, and there's even in smaller towns and everywhere. I mean, use Google. God, we love Google, but yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
It's funny because like you start going to meetups, you start talking to people, you get to tell your story. Oh yeah, I'm a project manager. I just got laid off like 3 months ago. I'm still looking for work. And you know, oh, okay. And then nothing will happen. But then I don't know. 3 weeks later, John, who's in your meetup, is talking to his brother, who's like, yeah, our startup is failing because we need a project manager. Oh, I know a guy. And now you got to lead, right? Like everybody in my meetup, I know what they do. It's a neighborhood meetup, so I kind of know like where we all kind of live, but like I know what all they do, who has kids, who doesn't. I know one of them became a client. She's like, Hopper, yeah, I'm looking to make a move in my career, but let's talk.
That's such a great point too. And to even kind of connect the dots, I mean, you said when you met Patrick, frequenting the bar, frequenting karaoke. I mean, if you just use the same concept to go to a meetup or a group, it's the same gymnastics there you do, but it shouldn't be anything different. And I know, and something I really liked about you when we first met, still love, like you show up as yourself. You get this Jason personally, you get this Jason professionally, and I'm very much the same way, which is one of the many reasons we got along. But we're so over the old school, there are the groups that are like, the suit and tie, and that's fine for people. But there's so many ones, I mean, for any walk of life or any flavor you want. And that even the neighborhood one, like that's huge.
For sure. I was going to say, so I'm going to tell you the next part or the beginning of the Patrick story. So we're friends. We're at the bar. We're shooting pool. We're doing karaoke. We go to the bar to get another beer. And this guy who's sitting there, he goes, hey, Patrick, I've been thinking I'd really like for you to come and work for me. And Patrick's like, I'm sorry. Remind me, what do you do again? And he goes, I own a data analytics company that runs data for apartment complexes. Now, we don't know this guy very well. He's not a friend. He's a dude we kind of know from the bar, right? And we've had conversations with him. He's not in our group. He's not our friend. And Patrick's waiting tables at the time. He's like, are you serious? He's like, I am totally serious. He's like, if you are serious, I'll be in your office Monday morning. He goes, I want you to be in my office Monday morning. He gave me the address. Patrick's like, I don't know how to do this. He goes, I'll train you how to do it. Cut to today. He's the director of the company, Patrick.
Stop. Oh, I love that story.
So my point being, it's not going to be a good friend, a family member that's going to get you your next job. It's not. It's going to be an acquaintance, somebody you kind of know or are getting to know from a meetup or a professional networking group or something like that. Again, it was just some kind of guy we kind of knew. He ended up getting the job, and now he's the director of the company.
Oh, that's awesome. And you have to kind of plant that seed, like you said early on, when you're, okay, I just got laid off. I just got fired. I think I'm going to start looking in a few months, or, hey, I'm coming back from a leave of absence, whatever that may be, because it's not always open. I think that's where so many people go wrong is they're like, well, I went to this meetup and nothing happened. It's like, again, a plant doesn't flower overnight. It takes some time to water it.
Hey, I tell clients all the time, when's the best time to plant a tree?
When is it?
20 years ago. That way you have a tree. When's the second best time to plant the tree? Today.
That's amazing. Oh, you've given so many great pieces of advice. So as we come across the finish line here, what advice do you have for listeners that you haven't already told us?
Stay positive. Look, I get it. I've been doing this a while, right? I've been doing this a while, and I've been on both sides of it. I've been looking for a job. I've been a job coach. I understand what a beat down job search is. But you need to realize you've got to stay positive. I get it. Sometimes it's hard, but it is so necessary because nobody's going to hire hi, I'd like to have a job, please. Nobody's going to hire that person. And trust me, as a former recruiter, you come into my office and sit down, I could tell there's like a shadowy kind of figure behind you. I could see it. And I'm like, that's a red flag right there. I don't know what it is, but there is something wrong.
Bad vibes.
Yeah, bad vibes. It's like, ooh, I don't think so.
Oh, that's so great. No, when I recruited, it was the same thing. It was we would get feedback all the time. Not excited enough about the position, not enough personality, even for plant workers or people that didn't have to interact with others. It does matter. That's a great piece that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah,
stay positive and realize it's just temporary. If you're tenacious, if you're putting in work, I had clients sometimes like, you want me to do what? Yeah, you got to put in work. If job search were easy, everybody that wanted one would have one. It's a hard game. It's super fucking hard. If you aren't going to put in the work, forget about it. Put in the work, continue your process, and be positive. That's it.
That's it. Jason, this has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, this was so knowledgeable. And if you're listening to this, you want to follow Jason, connect with him on LinkedIn, head to the show notes and tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.